So speaking of love of collaboration, next up we have Steve Limmer, who is the organizer of Lean Coffee Belfast and Product Camp. So yeah, take it away, Steve.
Coming off mute first. Okay, I'll share my screen and we'll get on with it. Okay, can you see that okay? I'll take silence for, yep, absolutely, brilliant. All right, thanks, Louise. I'm a senior delivery lead in LIT. I've been working in agile ways of working for the last 10 years or so out of a 15-year career in tech. I've been a coach as well, and it was as a coach I started looking a bit deeper into how people react and how people work together, and that wasn't meant to be a pun. So as a coach, my interest has been in getting people to work together, collaborate, as Louise says. I mean, my interests are building communities of practice. I've built up the Lean Coffee group. I work together with a group of others that they organise Product Camp. I've done Lean Coffee in Westminster. I build up communities of practice within anywhere I work. So I've been really interested in the thermodynamics of groups, the interests in neuroscience behind how people work together, how people act together. And it's really weird coming from a coaching perspective as a person who cares about collaboration, about getting people to work better together. And my talk is really why right now it's okay to be a bit selfish. It does seem a little bit of a cognitive dissonance there. So basically, I'm going to go and do a little bit of neuroscience with you. And believe me, this is this is not pseudoscience from my point of view. It is because I'm absolutely not a scientist. But the research there holds up. So firstly, we're going to do something a bit weird. And that is like probably not working with my slides. Let me see what's happening here. Number one, here we go. Got it. Happy days. Right. First of all, stick your hand up like this. Okay. Cross your thumb into the palm of your hand. Okay. So this represents your brain. I know, right? Class. So they're important bits. Brainstem, where link into your spinal cord, where you get your feed to your brain. There's two regions that really matter. Number one, limbic system. So this is made up of your hippocampus and your amygdala. This is your reaction center. This is the bit of your brain that goes fight or flight. Okay, so this is an older part of your brain. It was developed before you became a cognitive reasoning thing that you are. This is your general reaction center. This is generally the bit of your brain that works first. So wrap it over the top of it. This is your prefrontal cortex. This is the frontal lobe, part of your brain that has your reasoning, rational thinking part that works best in calm, quiet, cool scenarios. This is the brain that is logical. This is the one that says, okay, now it's time to leave after having a few drinks. Sometimes it does, maybe not always works. But anyway, this is the one that's in control most of the time. However, if you come into any sort of situation that disturbs you in any sort of way, boom, brain flips, this bit kicks in first. You've got a couple of microseconds before the rational part of your brain goes in, but in general, this is the bit that controls your emotions and your reactions. And that's the bit that right now is triggered like hell because of how we are working. And I'm going to go into why. So right now, I'm sure every one of you is zoomed out. And I mean, like, I know we're on the chat here. It's great crack. This is a learning experience. So we're not all fully engaged. However, you know your day to day when you're stuck within meeting. How exhausted are you right now? I'm pretty much going to say, I'd imagine every single one of you right now is absolutely fucked because it is really, really rough right now. And there's reasons behind it. So number one, excessive amount of eye contact blows your head to pieces. Okay, for two reasons. Number one, in a normal human situation, your eye contact, you can break your eye contact off. Your brain interprets lots of eye contact as a hyper intense situation. It's either fight, flight, or the RF. However, right now, because you're in that continual state, your brain is hyper aroused, and if you're doing that for many hours, it's not getting a break. The other part of this as well is there's links, and there's lots of evidence behind this. The having eye contact in human form is quite rewarding. It's pleasurable. Your brain sees it as a pleasurable thing. However, when you're in a meeting and there's loads and loads of eyes looking at you, brain does not know how to interpret this very well at all. Really bad for you. Next one, the mirror effect. If you stared at a mirror for many hours, you would no doubt pick up many flaws about yourself. I know I would. You could spend hours going, ooh. Okay, you're basically doing that with the video on at all points right now, especially if you're sharing your video and you're seeing yourself in the corner of your screen. Really bad for you. Your brain does not love this. It is really bad for your self-confidence. This is important. Our usual mobility is hampered significantly. I don't know about you guys, I certainly love a good walk and talk where I can get my brain working. I know that most of my best creative moments come from when I'm not sitting in a chair. Right now, we're diminished significantly because we're tied to the desk, especially in this current world. And then finally, cognitive load is massive. As I was saying to you about the hyper aroused state, we're just in a situation right now where our brains are just having all of this flux going in. We're also having to think about how we react to people. So I would imagine, I know I do this all the time, I overreact or over exaggerate my movements. Somebody's making a good point on a call, my head's thinking I'm bobbing along or sticking my thumb up. You're having to constantly do that. You're having to find a way to affirm exaggeratedly, because in real life you're not picking up those cues. You're not able to do that anymore. You're not able to send affirmation. So it's really hard. Your brain's thinking about this all the time, and then ultimately all of this stuff, there's a reward from meeting people in real life and having interactions. It's pleasure. We're not getting that same reward anymore. It's really tough. It makes us all struggle, and ultimately it's a sensory overload. So by a sensory overload, this manifests itself in other ways as well. Right now, it's your sensory overload means that you're constantly stressed. You're feeling a little bit of irritability. In fact, it can be up to extreme levels of irritability. You can feel wound up, short of breath, anxiety. All of this. I mean, this is all just coming from this overload that we're getting from our seeing ourselves all the time on calls. This is why it's okay to be selfish. And here's how we're going to do it. Firstly, oxygen mask. The oxygen mask principle. If you've never heard of this, you're not aware of it. I think back to whenever you used to be able to go on flights. And if you haven't dozed off whenever they're talking you through the safety, one of the things they tell you about when if the oxygen masks pop down, who do you put it on first? Yourself. You have to put it on yourself first. You're no good to anybody if you're sitting there gasping while the plane's running out of oxygen and you're trying to put your oxygen mask onto put an oxygen mask onto somebody else. You have to sort yourself out first. This same principle applies to yourself right now. So, as I say, we're in a situation where we need to be a wee bit more. We have to be a wee bit more mindful of ourselves right now, because we cannot be effective if we're trying to sort out everyone else around us, but we're not able to look after ourselves. So I'm going to give you some fairly practical, fairly obvious tips. I mean, it is kind of like granny suck eggs kind of material here, but let's be honest, it's a lightning talk, and I'm not a neuroscientist. So, but look, here's how to look after yourself. Number one, get the video off. Simples. Just turn it off. Just be brutal with people. Just say, listen, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm gonna knock this off for a bit. Means you're not seeing yourself in the corner of your screen, which is good. Also, like anecdotally, I can tell you this. The last place I was working, my boss phoned me up one day and she said, "You have to turn your screen off, your camera off." And I said, "Why's that?" And she said, "Because you've got a resting bitch face, and basically everybody sees your reactions on calls, and your eyes rolling is actually audible now." So I was like, "Okay, fair." I wasn't working on a great situation, I have to admit. Anyway. Next one, 2 questions you ask if you're being invited or if you have somebody's calendar crashed you, which is more often the case than not. Am I critical to this call? Could this call happen without me? If no, then okay. If yes, then that's the first qualification. Second qualification, could this be discussed over other means? How many times have you had a meeting that could have really been an email or a Teams chat or a Zoom chat or whatever, or Slack? You know, there's a lot of unnecessary crap. You can filter it out. Ask for meeting agendas, be pretty brutal about it. I've started doing this a lot. It just means you know what's coming and you can actually plan. So if somebody dumps a 1 hour call into your calendar, you can go, okay, I know what we're going to cover content wise. Asynchronous skills are super important. I mean, everybody went on about agile not being about documentation. I found that was furthest from the truth. I found there was more documentation working on agile ways, and simply because people got better at documenting and turning their things into living code, living repositories, artifacts, just loads of stuff that says this is why we're doing it all along the way. Develop those skills and just be very, very clear about what you're doing, why you're doing it, who it's for, what the benefits of doing this thing are for. And it means that you don't necessarily have to have meetings. If you can say, look, we don't need to talk. Here's a link off to some diagrams that we've been doing that shows where we're our thinking, or here's a mural board that we've knocked up with all the ideas we're going with. Fifth one, intent-based communication. So what I mean by this is, I'm doing this thing and here's my intent by doing it. I use this a lot. I like this one. It's simply it's a rip-off from the army where they have a thing called commander's intent, where if you go out on a mission, you have an intent to do something for a purpose. It's the same in our lives. If you use the word, if you use the talk of the phrase "I intend to," it means people are very clear about your purpose, about what you're going to do. So it's really good as well. You can do it, and it means you can do it on a meeting call. You can do it on via written means, but it's very, very clear. Here's my purpose, and it means there's no ambiguity. You need to take away ambiguity from everything you're doing right now, and then finally get the breaks in, no matter what. I did a training course last week. It was 8 hours of intense video calls. I had a migraine for 2 hours after it, and I had to lie in a blackened room, and that was the worst one for me in a long, long time. I haven't done that in a while, and I'd forgotten how bad it was. But generally, I will knock out at least half an hour every day where I can just go and switch off completely. Sometimes I'll take a quick power nap, if I'm being honest. I do. I love them. Also, like generally though, if you can block out at least 1 hour for focus so you can get your own stuff done. I mean, I took an hour this afternoon and I was able to get more stuff done in that hour than I did the rest of the day. And that is that. Hopefully it wasn't as lightning as I'd hoped. It was a bit longer, but I'm hoping it was okay, and I hope you got something from it.
Awesome, thank you very much. No, very, very, very good engaging talk. I really like that. Yeah, so we have a couple of questions come in. So first one's like, how do you feel about online having meetings only for Q&A? And kind of follow up ones like, we tend to record presentations, videos, but we would like meet for like kind of async Q&A meetings.
It's a funny one. I prefer a Q&A. A Q&A should be more engaging, shouldn't it? It should be more about the interaction. You're more learning from each other through a Q&A. Yeah, you're nearly. I would flip it. I would send the recording out and then say, just fancy a Q&A after, and do maybe 15, 20, 25 minutes of that rather than the other way around. You know, it makes it easier. You can digest the recording in your own time, but the Q&A is more important.
Another one I had come through here was like, what's your kind of view on like VR style meetings? So something like, getting like the kind of turn your camera off, the fatigue and the kind of blacken things out.
Ooh, that's a good question. I've no experience. So I've no experience of VR type meetings, to be perfectly honest with you. I like the idea of it. I would like to try it, but again, I reckon it could be really, really hard from a cognitive point of view as well. Because you're going to have to adapt to more different visual stimuli. I don't know. Not sure.
No, yeah, like I do think about this myself. Like, a lot of us here come from a very traditional, like, office environment. Some are like full remote, and how do you balance that, like, not being on Zoom all day?
Yeah.
So, like, if you can't physically be in the office together, it was a comment here, but I was kind of like just kind of take your take on it. Like, so some people, and I've seen other companies, but the comment was about like like no meeting Thursdays. Now, what are your kind of views? Like, having like a no meeting day once a week where nothing can be put on the calendar.
So LIT are quite strict about having a no meeting Friday, and that's really, really good right up until you get the management level, and then it's like all meeting Friday. I would love a no meeting Friday. That would be absolutely amazing. Definitely, no, I totally agree. I think it's important to do. I think like you obviously have to have caveats in there as well. Like if this is really super important that you can't get out of it. But yeah, I really do. I think 1 day a week where you don't have to be interrupted and you've got that sole focus time, that would be pretty awesome. I'd love
that. There's one I kind of picked up as well. So you're like kind of mentioned about the whole like calendar crashing and like always having just like what are your tips for like someone who's potentially like say junior and they are like having to book something? I'm very guilty too. Like a junior will contact me is like throw something in the calendar, and I'm guilty of like just saying like no description, just the title, and I know what I'm going to talk about, and they'll figure it out. And it's surprising them on the day. What is like what should someone do when they're creating a calendar? And like what's the bare minimum they should be giving that person?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, number one, don't try not to calendar crash if you can. I would say to everyone, like we use Outlook. If you're using Outlook, you can make your calendar visible to the point of you can see where you're busy or not busy. You don't actually have to see the detail of it. That's usually a good thing. Check that there's no real conflicts. If there are any real conflicts, send out why you think this is super important. So here's why I need to talk to you, and here's what the outcome of this meeting should be. Here's the agenda I'd like to see. I love agendas. I mean, it's quite sad, but it really helps drive a meeting where you can say, look, 5 minutes where we all gather, chit chat. Then the next 15 we're going to be talking about the problem. And then the next 10 minutes after that we're going to be coming up with a solution. You know, that something as simple as that.
No, yeah, that's really good. Actually, yeah, and it's a great tip for people. Like, kind of, it's so easy just to stick a calendar in, but having the agenda, so it's almost like a reminder of the person organizing, like what they're looking to achieve from that meeting as it's going forward. I
mean, like last week, I had some directors send us a no agenda 30-minute call from the States. I declined it. Then he put it back in the calendar, and then I went to it, and it was basically him looking over an architecture diagram. I was like, dude, why? You're a director. Why do you care? Why are you bringing me into this? I don't care either. If I don't care, you shouldn't care. It was so wasteful and pointless. I was so frustrated.
I think that kind of links into like something that I was going to say, which is like, we have like obviously recurring meetings weekly, but some of the times like with meetings and stuff, well, as a kid, you're kind of like you're taught not to be not to be rude and not to leave and stuff. But I think kind of in meetings, all of that kind of goes out the window. So it's kind of with those meetings that maybe are block booked in your calendar, but you don't have like much to say, but you have to join for a sync or something.
Yeah.
When can you leave? Like, it's kind of without being rude. And I think,
it's those two questions you have to ask yourself. Am I critical to this meeting? Can this be communicated by other means?
Yeah.
I mean, if there's any sort of synchronization, it's just like, look, send me the meeting notes, and if there's any actions, we'll pick them up.
No, thanks, Steve. That was cracker.
No worries.